His favorite was, I'm going to hire someone to kill you and make it look like an accident and no one will ever know. And the thought of him raising my son was just terrifying to me.
Domestic violence is violence or aggressive behavior towards one's partner or family member. It's a growing issue nationwide, and according to DoSomething.org, 1 in 3 American women will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime. It's also the leading cause of injury for women, and only 25% of physical assaults are reported to police.
So he turned to my son and said, okay, here's what I'm going to do to your mommy. And my son got between us and he held his arms out like this. And he actually spit on his father and he said, don't you hurt my mommy. It still makes me emotional. So that was when I decided to leave. He actually hit me the first time before we got married, and I thought about breaking off the relationship. But by that time, he had pretty much isolated me from my family and a lot of my friends, and so I didn't really feel I had anybody to turn to.
And while Cheryl's story is a familiar one for women nationwide, the issue is heavily felt here in the state of South Carolina. For the last 10 years, South Carolina has taken the #1 spot in the nation for domestic violence killings. Even though we dropped down to #2, just behind Alaska this past year, we still see more than double the national average of domestic violence cases in our state. And the current laws aren't making those numbers go down.
We've seen a culture that has just grown and grown. We have not seen numbers go down significantly across the state. We see patches of areas that will put one program into place and we'll see some realization of lower incidents, but nothing that has brought us down statewide. And it got the media's attention because it has grown. I mean, we are now second in the nation on the number of women killed in situations of domestic violence. That's not a statistic a state wants to have.
We currently have laws on the books that are just not appropriate. They could be too harsh or not harsh enough depending on the type of harm caused.
A new bill is being introduced to the House in the coming week that seeks to strengthen the law. The proposed law would have a 3-tiered system for charging abusers. It would strengthen training for law enforcement officers on how to properly respond to domestic disputes. It would also enhance education, making age-appropriate classes on the topic required in middle school and even elementary school.
The victims' injuries really play a huge part in this issue. So the heinousness of the crime had to come into place more prevalently than the number of occurrences. So we structured the penalties based on that. So domestic violence 1 would be the worst. 2 would be moderate, if there is such a thing, and 3 would be the base level.
These extra tools that we're asking for from the General Assembly for frontline cops and prosecutors will help, but it's not going to change the hearts and minds. We've got to also start with having conversations, age-appropriate conversations as early as middle school and elementary school about what is and what is not appropriate conduct. The cycle needs to be challenged. In other words, kids that are growing up in violent homes, there needs to be a counterpoint there. Someone needs to be talking to these kids. And I'm not saying that just because you grow up in a violent home that you are more likely, that you will be a batterer or you will be the battered. But you are more likely to be one of those two things if you grow up in that home.
I believed in marriage. I thought I should work on my marriage. It was important. I expected to marry for life. I cared about him. In fact, I stayed a year longer with him because he was very depressed and threatening suicide. I had a suitcase packed in the back of my car. I was going to leave, but I walked out the door one morning and I said, I'll see you later. And he said, if I'm still alive. And that gave me a sense of responsibility for helping him. He professes to love you, but he doesn't display it. And you have a right to go where you want, see whom you want. Why is this person trying to control everything in your life?
And it's a question she hopes fewer women face in the near future. For Palmetto Scene, I'm Katie GEER.